It's going to be very interesting to hear what Pierre Poilievre has to say in this interview, because if something goes sideways, you know full well Donald Trump is going to jump on that.
The Liberals are already melting down. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, Pierre Poilievre has dropped an image which is now breaking the internet that he did an interview with none other than Joe Rogan, who has the largest podcast on planet Earth. And with that, we've got a pundit on CBC who gives the dumbest take. Even Vassie calls it out. On top of that, we've got Carney's newest Liberal caught using taxpayer money for her own business. Let's jump into this. Starting this episode off, we got some ugly polling data, and well, this is important to note because after this podcast, we'll see what happens with this polling data, but Table Salt posting this. So this is coming from Nanos. We've got 48% for the Liberals and 31% for the Conservatives, 11% for the NDP. I saw this graphic earlier today comparing Justin Trudeau to Mark Carney, and well, what's really changed? Ended March 2025, since March 2025, unemployment rate 6.6 versus 6.7, national debt 45 billion versus 70 billion, food inflation 3.2 versus 4.1, and yet he's got 66% approval rating. People just think Mark Carney's going to do something. Most people aren't paying attention to what's actually happening. Moving ahead, we've got this one. TD Economics predicts business investment in Canada will go negative in 2026, and only government and consumer spending will prop up the economy. Terrible news. Looks like Carney's plan to tank Canada is working. Thought El Bozo's voted in the economic savant. Yeah. Isn't Mark Carney supposed to be this brilliant banker that can save our economy? Looks like it's doing the opposite. Moving ahead, we've got the Globe and Mail with this. Chinese EV maker BYD in talks to open Canadian dealerships, consultant says. As Embrandt points out, zero manufacturing here, obviously. Yeah, it would just be dealerships. They would make all the stuff in China, have all the jobs in China, and then just sell the vehicles here. Obviously awful for all the automakers in Canada, especially these EV ones that the Liberals keep propping up with their tax dollars. We got the Reclamaire posting this, losing the lefty vote. This is quite the statement, and I think he's right here because we've got David McGuinty here, defense minister, announcing $1.4 billion in domestic ammunition production. This is completely against the left. They don't believe in any sort of conflict or ammunition. And while we're looking at the details here, they're right down here, but he's got it written nicely here. $355 million to construct nitrocellulose facility, $57 million loading, assembling, and packing M231 and 232 cartridges, $642 million to load, assemble, and pack 155 millimeter high explosive projectiles. Yeah, lefties don't like those, as well as $305 million producing empty metal shells for 155 millimeter artillery. Will Mark Carney lose votes because of all this military procurement and specifically projectiles? Time will tell. Moving ahead, we've got Melissa posting this one here. Floor crossing MP Lori Idlut expense purchases from her own business. You can't make this stuff up. As she says, newest Liberal floor crosser got caught basically stealing from taxpayers. Nunavut MP reimbursed House of Commons says purchases were made in error. Oh, of course, oopsies. Except, was it an error? She made multiple purchases. This is ridiculous and obviously a lie. She reimbursed the House of Commons for items bought from her own shop in error. Idlut is the sole proprietor of Gallery Carvings Nunavut, which sells Inuit-made carvings and artwork. Publicly available expenditure reports shows that on 4 occasions in 2025, she expensed items here to her own business. This is not an error when you do it 4 times. So looking at her expenditures here, you can see Lori Idlut Nunavut, and I went through a bunch of these here, but first off, we'll just look at the one I've highlighted. So Carvings Nunavut Inc. Gifts given as a matter of protocol, $1,380 for whatever this was on August 27th. Also notice too, I went through these financials. She wastes a lot of money on Bell Mobility, voice and data overage fees for mobile services, $152. See that again right here, overage fees, $138. I don't know what she's doing. Just buy a plan where you don't have overage fees. She's quite literally looks like spending almost $400 a month on her cell phone. Maybe someone should take away her cell phone. And as it states here, so there's total purchases, $1,756. 2 of them were for $150 made in January 2025, $76. And then the one I just showed you there, the big one for $1,380. They were all listed as gifts given as a matter of protocol. In a statement sent to CBC News following questions about the expenditures, Idlut wrote they were for Indigenous artwork used in her capacity as an MP. They were submitted in error, but I've subsequently reimbursed the House of Commons. Oh, please. She tried to get away with this and she got caught. Now, you might be thinking, well, out of everything, this is really just not much money compared to the scandals we see out there. I don't care. It doesn't matter. This breaks code of parliament parliament, there has to be punishment, fines. She should be fined at least $500 or whatever the maximum ridiculous penalty they have. I believe it's $500 for breaking ethics violations. Simply saying, oops, you caught me, sorry, I paid it back is not enough. Like, how about 30 days in jail and a $500 fine? Because maybe these parliamentarians would then take their job serious for once. Moving ahead, we've got Pierre Poilievre breaking the internet here, going on the Joe Rogan podcast. As we see here, fought for Canadian workers and Canadian interests on the world's biggest podcast. Thank you, Joe Rogan, for an amazing conversation. So Joe Rogan usually likes to get to know the guests beforehand for a couple hours. So I'm wondering if these guys had a workout together, got to know each other. It'd be cool if there's some footage from that in the podcast. I mean, I doubt they show that, but if there was even some behind the scenes footage, that'd be cool. So excited to see this. And I bring up this post here where Patrick Bet David is replying to. So he was really hard on Pierre for not going on in these podcasts, but he posted here, he should have done this 2 years ago. Better late than never. Conservative voices in Canada need a backbone. Stop being scared of the media and walking on eggshells. Start imposing your ideas every chance you get. This is a good sign of progress. We've got a behind the scenes look here from Anna Poilievre.
Are you ready for this?
Okay, we got to take that audio real quick, but you can see just a little teaser here. And with that, we've got them talking about this on CTV. Sharon Kerr does not like this. She just tries to diminish this like Joe Rogan's podcast. It's something that, well, I'll let her speak for herself. She's about to make a fool of herself here.
Sebastian, your thoughts on, I mean, I remember during the campaign, I think there was something about whether or not this would come to fruition. It ultimately didn't. There was some talk of whether that was on purpose or whatever. What is the strategy here? I mean, it seems obvious. There's 15 million people who listen to this podcast, but tell me your thoughts on that.
Wow, incredible news. I'm glad to hear that happened. I look forward to listening to Mr. Poilievre push a common sense agenda, one of free trade and a tariff-free trade, not just, by the way, to an American audience where this podcast is very big, but I believe it is probably the most listened to podcast also in Canada, so a great effort to reach those voters. I think, look, this comes on the heels of a successful trip on the part of Mr. Poilievre to the United States. I know he's still delivering or set to deliver a keynote address in New York, but we've seen him put forward and pitch a very coherent and competent plan in Detroit and in Texas, recently meeting actually with the governor of Texas. So I think really showing a very statesman-like attitude, showing Canadians that this is someone who can step into the role of prime minister on day one, and someone who is ready to champion Canada, champion our industry, and champion a successful trade partnership with our greatest ally. Something Mr. Carney has been significantly lacking. I know that's the topic that you want to touch on here. He has set for himself not one but two deadlines that have blown through to reach a deal. He has not reached that deal, and seemingly we have at every stage seen that there are setbacks in that trade relationship. Despite what he wants to set up trade with other countries, this is a critical relationship for us, and we need him for the sake of Canada and for the sake of our jobs for him to show some progress on that.
Louis, I mentioned how many people listen to this podcast. Among them, of course, a ton of Trump supporters who would have been on the receiving end of all of his negative messaging around Canada, all of his justification for his tariff regime. And Rogan isn't, and we've seen this in the past few weeks, afraid to take a different position as of late than Trump, even though he adores him, particularly on the war in Iran, that kind of thing. What will you be listening for as far as messaging from the opposition leader goes?
Well, you know what? I've been saying this for weeks, Vashi, that the biggest challenge that Pierre Poilievre faces right now is the fact that he's inaudible. I mean, forget about the floor crossers and all that stuff. The fact that he's just not in the conversation that Mark Carney is in has been a problem for him. He's inaudible. People are not, hearing him. And so to go on the Joe...
Yeah, that's because the media doesn't cover him. They just cover Carney going over to Europe, going over to wherever, Japan. You see these comments, oh, I like a prime minister who can carry his own bag. Stuff like that. Like, who cares? This podcast is huge because it's going in front of people and the liberal media can't stop it. That's why they don't like this. The biggest podcast in the world and they can't stop it. Hopefully Pierre rolls it all out, one topic after the other, that just completely exposes what Carney's up to, what the liberals are doing, how bad things are in in Canada, because this is going to reach a lot of people who are swing voters in Canada. Let's just take a look at that really quick here, because Vesper has already broken this down. We've got him comparing Joe Rogan's podcast to CBC and CTV, and you can see it's peanuts over here. We're talking 5.3 million, 2.7 million. He's got these added up, YouTube, Instagram, etc., versus Joe Rogan over here at 40 million. So he broke this down as Joe Rogan has 668% more viewers than CBC and 1,384 more viewers than CTV, or 406% more than both of these combined. Something to note, he's done this based on public subscribers and public Instagram followers, not so much as total views. And this gets complicated on YouTube because you can have a channel with 196,000 subscribers, and well, rarely in my case or any creator is going to get 196,000 views on a video. That's just not how it works. You have different pockets of people. You have the dedicated everyday watcher, then you've got casuals, and then the super rare casuals, the people who come around for elections. So Joe Rogan's going to have the same thing. So we're at 20 million on YouTube. Likely he's only going to get a couple million that watch per episode. As these channels get bigger, you just have less and less everyday watchers. Regardless though, this episode will be seen by millions of people.
Joe Rogan show, I have to say that's a great get for him, because he needs every tribune that he can get in terms of getting his message across, especially talking to such a large audience. Mark Carney went on Stephen Colbert, if I remember, when he kicked off his campaign last year. The fact that Pierre Poilievre is going on Joe Rogan is only logical to me.
Let's bring that up for a quick second. Mark Carney launches his bid for Canadian Prime Minister. I guess it was Liberal leader. He was going to become the unelected Prime Minister immediately, which is what happened. But he did that on an American talk show while he was 91% invested in America and didn't want to tell anyone about that. I don't get how Liberals aren't offended by that. And I'm not anti-American. I've got family that lives down in America. But like, you're going to be the Prime Minister of Canada? Like, I want to see that you've got skin in the game here. He's got 0.53% skin in the game in our country. He doesn't believe in Canada, yet he's running our country. It's absolutely preposterous. Carney launched his bid on Jon Stewart, not Stephen Colbert. But either way, it doesn't matter. He was down in America to do it. Why did he do that? Because he knew he'd have a bigger audience across Canada launching it on a big left-wing podcast in America.
I think it was Jon Stewart, if I recall. But that's okay. Your point is very well taken, though. I remember at the time thinking, why an American show, not a Canadian one, Jamie? But it worked. I remember the degree to which people were talking about that appearance after, and it's hard to take away from the fact that Jon Stewart has a big certain type of audience, and Joe Rogan has an even bigger certain type of audience. Your thoughts on what to expect out of that appearance?
Yeah, I think this is a smart move for Pierre. I think he was on the Peter Mansbridge podcast a couple of weeks ago, generated a lot of earned media coverage for that here domestically. And going to Joe Rogan's podcast, it's a very kind of open environment. It's not scripted. We're like quick Q&A. And I think it allows Pierre to kind of really present the case for Canada, and as well as get to know him on a more personal level and his politics and kind of what drives him. I think when you look at that audience south of the border, we know that it skews younger, it skews male, and those are people who have been voting for Donald Trump disproportionately. And so it's a chance to deliver the Canadian message to those people directly. And on the Canadian side of the border, there's also a huge following and a huge audience there. And so he gets to speak to conservatives. He gets to speak to disaffected youth and younger people who feel shut out of the housing market and others like it. And I think it's a real opportunity for Pierre to deliver a message of economic literacy and remind people, like, here's how the world actually works, and the costs for tariffs and some of these bad government policies on both sides of the border are being borne out by the people living through those bad decisions. And so I think for the audience, the reach, and all the buzz, this is a good move for Pierre. And I think the kind of, when you get away from the kind of like talking of the issue of the day kind of style of politics, the kind of who is Pierre and kind of where are the side tangents that Joe Rogan's going to take him on, as the listener is probably more curious to see what those will be, because I think those moments will be less predictable.
Yeah, he's right here. Get him more conversational, less of those talking point kind of videos. And let's just go back to Peter Mansbridge real quick. Vesper dug up this clip the other day. We have a much younger Ezra Levant. Before we watch it, just briefly looking at this polling firm section here on the Moose chart, we've got National News Watch, which was invested in by the Anderson brothers, Bruce Anderson, Rick Anderson, Jim Anderson. And then we've got these three guys here on the top, Perry, Adrian, and Bruce, launched Spark Advocacy Polling. And Bruce Anderson being the stepfather, or basically the father of Kate Purchase being the director of communications for Justin Trudeau. So he's not the biological father, but basically her dad. What we're talking about here is Kate Purchase, and we're talking about Kate Purchase's wedding. That's what this clip is here. Kate Purchase's wedding, and who is officiating the wedding? Okay, so I don't know what this music is, but we've got Katie Purchase here. And oh, who's that? Who's that? Peter Mansbridge officiating Kate Purchase's wedding in Italy. It's a small world. A much younger Peter Mansbridge. These liberals are not just acquaintances. Okay, so back to the topic at hand here.
Actually, if I can just jump in here, if I can just jump in here, obviously, and I think you mentioned this, the devil's going to be in the details here because you mentioned it. One listener of that podcast is Donald Trump in the White House. And so it's going to be very interesting to hear what Pierre Poilievre has to say in this interview, because if something goes sideways, you know full well Donald Trump is going to jump on that, and that's probably going to mean some bad days, not only for Pierre Poilievre, but for Canada as a whole.
Well, I think the stakes, to Louis' point, Sharon, the stakes are actually very high for that reason, right? Not just from a political perspective for Mr. Poilievre, but kind of for the pragmatic perspective of our entire country. And I will say, if you look at his appearances in the United States so far, there's been nothing off message from what the Liberals, the type of message the Liberals would be delivering, or anything where, and he's actually said this, I think, on Mansbridge's podcast, like, he's not criticizing the government in other places. So it's been consistent so far. If there's anyone who's going to try, I don't know if he will, but like Rogan gets a lot of wild things out of people. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but it's a risky environment.
Well, it could be high gain, high risk. Yeah. But I think, listen, if the goal here was to get him in front of the most number of people to hear his message, Joe Rogan has 15.5 million followers on X. It's the most listened to podcast. But all of that being said, it is the same people that he is already that are his base. He's not expanding his circle of who he's coming to. And just to be clear, Joe Rogan isn't someone who has editorial standards. He's not a journalist. He's a podcaster and has constantly in the past been criticized for a lot of the misinformation he spreads. So
here she goes. So Joe Rogan is misinformation and his podcast not that big, only 15 million plus the Instagram, 40 million people. No one's going to really watch this. Canadians have already seen this. It's not going to reach anyone.
There was someone who can pull out a bit of controversy. I would say there's going to be a lot of ears and eyes on this podcast because, like Lee said, it's high risk. One small thing off. We know people like Donald Trump listen to this. The only thing that is his advantage is that he is not in government. He is the opposition leader. The president has previously kind of negatively spoken about Mr. Poilievre. So there is risk to his personal brand here. But if you were asking me, did he get in front of a whole new set of crowds? No, I already think he's pandering to the same listener group of the Joe Rogan style.
Well, we'll see. I think a lot of people listen to that podcast.
15 million plus.
Yeah. Okay. I got to leave it there. Guys, thanks.
Vassie's calling her out here saying, yeah, there's a lot of people watch that. She's like, oh, 15 million plus. No one new in Canada is going to see Pierre Poilievre's message. It's only the conservative base. That's what she's saying here. She is so ridiculous. They should just say, you know what, we're a little bit worried because it's a huge podcast and a lot of people are going to see it. What if they were just honest for once instead of this nonsense?
A lot of people listen to that podcast.
15 million plus.
Yeah. Okay. I got to leave it there. Guys.
What is she even doing here? She's agreeing that is a huge audience, but then she just said,
if you were asking me, did he get in front of a whole new set of crowds? No, I already think he's pandering to the same listener group of the Joe Rogan style.
15 million plus Instagram, 40 million people. He's not going to reach anyone new. She is out to lunch. Now, whether it changes the polls or not, we're going to have to see, but is he going to reach new people? Of course he's going to reach new people. It's going to be hundreds of thousands of new people. Why do you insult your viewers with Know Nothing Sharon Kerr? Maybe add Marco Mendicino to the list. How's the building coming along? It's been a year. You know, Mark Carney's pledged to build faster than we've ever built before. Any major projects approved through his rebranded major projects office in Calgary? Anything? Ouch. Yeah, nothing's happening. He's just taking credit for things that are already in the works. They're not building anything at lightning speed, the fastest ever, any of that. It's all just lies. It's quite shocking too. They keep bringing her on as some sort of political pundit that has something real to offer other than just propaganda from the government. It discredits this entire network when they bring Sharon Kerr on every single time to spew out this garbage. You know, they had someone on there 3 or 4 days ago. I didn't know who she was. I looked her up. She was a pretty neutral journalist and she had some pretty level-headed takes. Those are the kind of people they should be bringing on here.